Welcome to the third episode of the SCSG, or Silberman Center for Sexuality and Gender, podcast. My name is Mark King. I'm an intern at SCSG. This episode features some highlights from our Cultivating Black Joy Instagram Live event, created and hosted by my fellow intern, Rikki. This event was inspired by a chapter in the third edition of Social Work Practice with Transgender and Gender-Expansive Youth, which featured a conversation with Jonathan Lykes by SCSG's own Jama Shelton.
So I'm not going to keep anyone waiting. We're going to get started. My name's rikki. I go by they, them pronouns. And this is the Cultivating Black Joy event, discussion, interview. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, what you do, and also what your passion is.
Absolutely. So my name is Jonathan Lykes, he, they, she pronouns, and my passion is cultural production work, definitely trying to ensure that we move through the world through holistic energy practice, which is this idea of rejecting the world that only wants pieces of our identities and demanding that we're able to show up in our full selves wherever we are.
Snaps for that. Beautifully articulated. So my first question is, can you speak to what the Black Joy experience is for those who don't know?
So the Black Joy experience is rooted in the cultural work that comes out of the last 10 years of movement building. It is both what I would call the spirit work of our time, but it is literally an album series, a freedom song music compilation album series. So we released the first album in the Black Joy Experience series back in October 2018. So the Black Joy Experience, the goal is really to be able to capture freedom music and liberation chants, not only from the United States, but really from all around the world and throughout the Black diaspora. The inception of the Black Joy Experience started when I was able to study abroad in Cape Town, South Africa, and then ended up going back to intern at an organization there called Equal Education in the Khayelitsha Township outside of Cape Town. And it was there that I first got introduced to the spirit of movement work back in 2012. If you all have never heard kind of South African chants or some of the freedom music from the anti-apartheid movement, please go check it out. But that is where I really learned about freedom music in South Africa. You could walk into an organizing space and the energy in the space just shift because everyone is singing. Didn't matter if you could sing or not, but like just the spirit of the place is embedded so much into the cultural work. When you go to a direct action or when you go to a march in South Africa, it is a party. So much about what I learned about the Black radical tradition, the history of folks like Fela Kuti and other parts of like West Africa that add to this tradition. That is the inception of the Black Joy Experience.
Could you share more about the release of the second volume of the Black Joy Experience Freedom Song album? And what is its significance to you and how does it differ from the first volume?
Yes, so volume 2, which will be released in the next couple weeks, and then volume 3, which is set to be released during Juneteenth. It is a step up in every way as far as aiming to capture the cultural production work of organizers from around the world. So we have producers representing 5 different diasporic countries, from Brazil to Sierra Leone to Ghana to South Africa to folks from around the United States. Volume 2 really is that diasporic journey. It is really a representation of the freedom struggle throughout the Black diaspora in our generation, in the millennial generation. Also, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention that we have 2 singles on the album from the Queen of Bounce, Big Frida. And I was lucky enough to be able to travel around to New Orleans high schools and middle schools and local programs to be able to talk to young people about the importance and legacy of the life of Ella Baker. And that was just like, that. If there could be any other work I'm doing in my life, it would be like getting to go around, sing, dance with young Black and queer folks and share about the Black radical tradition and those ancestors who have came before us. So Volume 2, in many ways, is maybe what I hoped Volume 1 could be, but Volume 1 was a vessel to get us to where we are today. And yeah, I'm very excited about it finally being out in the world.
Absolutely. It's always evolving and growing, and that's the beauty of it. That's awesome.
I also just have to add to that, as a fellow social worker, like social work pride all in the house today, it really is core to my journey to be able to engage with young people, engage with young queer folks, engage with the history of movement building work as a practice of my social work. I'm lucky to be able to interact with young people that are navigating deep in systems. I think of my work as trying to, in some ways, abolish, in some ways, reform these deep in systems that are causing hurt, harm, and pain to young trans folks, young queer folks, young gender nonconforming folks. So when I think about those systems that are causing the most harm onto the lives of the young people that I care about, it is those deep in systems that I learned about in social work school. It is juvenile justice systems, housing and homelessness systems, child welfare systems, and those healthcare systems that need to be able to support young people. And back to this idea of holistic energy, I want to be able to build new systems where young people don't have to leave pieces of their identity behind, but where they can come with their full, entire, and vulnerable selves and get the support they need to live out their full self-determined lives without limitations or barriers.
There's that element of dance and joy and bringing that life to the room, and also somewhat like an anger and being like, I don't want the people I care about to be hurt like this anymore, and like holding space for both of those truths. Absolutely.
I love how you mentioned the idea of anger. And, in 2020, we created these cultural production meetings called rage rallies, where like there was just like it's really the juxtaposition of the Black joy experience. But to get to Black joy, we have to navigate our trauma. We have to navigate our anger. We have to be able to navigate all of the harm that has come upon Black and brown, queer and trans communities to arrive at the place where we are able, which Black and brown, queer and trans people are the best at, even in the midst of navigating systemic oppression and white supremacy, we are always going to conjure up our joy as an act of resistance. To get there, though, you got to navigate some anger and trauma and harm, and both sides of that coin are just as important to talk about.
How do you view the relationship between spirituality, joy, and liberation, especially for Black TGNC people, meaning transgender nonconforming people, for those who don't know?
When I think about spirituality for queer and trans people and gender nonconforming people, the first thing that comes to mind is my own upbringing in the church and how so many folks in the queer and trans community has felt alienated from a type of spirituality that oftentimes was connected to our resistance, particularly in the Black community. Spirituality went hand in hand with movement building. All of the organizing meetings usually took place in the church. And it was in some of the earlier Black Joy experience kind of engagements on the ground. And I just remember, and I believe this is a quote that Jama used in the book, I remember someone coming to me after we had kind of our chanting and songs, and they said, "This felt like church without the hurt." And that quote really stuck with me, both in a positive way, but also a sad way, because we have been alienated from a spirituality that has been so core to our people's survival because of transphobia, because of homophobia. so much about us getting access to those spaces hasn't been the same, at least from my experience as a millennial. We haven't had access in the same way. So in many ways, the Black Joy experience is trying to tap back in to a type of spirituality that we all have access to as Black, queer, trans, brown people navigating this world. A lot of times when we open up our Black Joy experience sessions, we open up with a chant called Ancestors Watching, in a moment to recognize all of those people who came before us in the struggle and in the movement. These are spiritual moments where we are really trying to think beyond a world that is tangible, a world that we can see, to tap into our ancestral lineage that we know had dreams and hopes and planted seeds for the trans liberation that we see today, for the queer and trans organizing work in the center of the movement for Black lives.
Yeah, I'm thinking now again, like what you said with like ancestral healing in this work. And it's like kind of living out the lives that our ancestors wanted to live out and kind of living through them in a way, them living through us. It's like we're all one and the same in a way.
And, you know, when I think about ancestral lineage, I have to name that I'm a part of the house and ballroom community. I'm a member of the House of Garçon. And the legacy of house and ballroom culture goes back more than 100 years to the Harlem drag balls. And so when I think about my familial lineage in the house and ballroom community, I think of that being another space where people are creating systems of liberation, where people are creating alternative systems that allow us to thrive, survive, and experience family, love, and joy, even in the midst of navigating white supremacy. My community isn't waiting for one day for the church to stop being homophobic or stop being transphobic for us to experience spirituality. My community isn't waiting for one day for white supremacy to magically be over for us to experience the full scope of liberation and freedom and love and joy in our lives. We actually are building our own subcultures, our own communities, our own spaces. So we are allowed to experience those things. And I'm just incredibly excited about what the next 8 to 10 years has to offer for queer and trans, Black and brown communities. I'm excited about the Black Joy experience being in the world, but I'm even more excited about the other cultural formations and pieces of cultural production that will come into fruition over the next 10 years.
That's right. All that. We are not waiting.
We don't even have time to wait. Like, we ain't got time to be
No.
on like these things to wait for people to stop oppressing us. Like, no.
Right. Even the ancestors are like, TikTok, like, hello.
Reclaiming my time. Like,
Absolutely.
Thanks again to Anna Rikki for hosting this event and to Jonathan for participating. If you want to see the entire conversation, which I highly recommend, check it out on our Instagram at SCSG_SSSW. And for more info on SCSG, we are on Twitter at the same handle or at our website, silbermanscsg.com.